I'm sharing with you 3 rank strategies that you can implement into your games right now. Each strategy has its own value proposition. A couple of them have a higher risk reward, but if you follow them carefully and manage your ranked points game to game, then this video will make everything much more clear, especially when it comes to seeing success during this rank split. Oh, and these strategies apply to all of the ranks. It doesn't matter if you're in bronze or in diamond, they all apply, and you should carry them with you throughout each rank. So let's get into it. Strategy 1 is all about positioning. Here's how it goes. I would land alone at a POI with a survey beacon. Obviously, you got to make sure to have one of the recon legends on your team so that you guys can scan it. But you can easily identify while you're in the dropship as to where survey beacons are that game. Now remember, they will change game to game, so just look at your map before you drop and adjust accordingly. The reason that I think landing at a beacon, and preferably without another team, is a good idea is you get to know where to position yourself for the eventual end game scenario. But you could also theoretically get pretty kitted from that one POI, especially if you have crafting there too. Now some of you are going to wonder, what happens if a team tries to come with us? Well, if it's a drop that your team is fairly confident in knowing how to 50-50 in, then I would say take the fight off drop. But there's never a one-size-fits-all approach. Apex is riddled with nuance, and I'm going to do my best to help you all understand why doing something one game could be smart, but also why changing that entirely the next game could be the move. Alright, so let's say you land uncontested and the zone is pulling far away from you. Well, you got to make sure to reserve enough time to make that rotation, because strategy 1 does not include late rotating. This strategy is for early positioning, and either 2 things will happen with this. The first is you will run into a fight along your rotation, and this may or may not make sense for you to take that fight, but if it seems appealing, I would obviously do so. Now, if it doesn't seem appealing, don't stress. Another opportunity will avail itself. Now, the second thing that could happen is you get to zone, you find some great real estate, and well, guess what? Eventually, plenty of teams will be merging their way to the zone, and I'm sure those kill point opportunities will once again become available. Now, some may think this is a boring approach to rank, and to that I'd say, well, you're probably going to struggle this season if you just constantly take fights, especially once you reach the rank that you're going to plateau in. In order to pull off this strategy though, I'd recommend using Valkyrie, one of the fortified legends such as Gibby, Caustic, or Newcastle, and the third legend should be another mobile legend like Wraith. But the third legend does have flexibility, so you could get away with running Bloodhound, Seer, or really whoever. But just remember, late rotating will screw this plan up severely, so be mindful of the ring timer and how far you have to go to get into what you think the final zone will be. Of course, if you see another survey beacon after the first scan, then hit that again, because knowing that next ring knowledge will be critical for this first strategy. If you found strategy 1 to be helpful and you're not already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing so that you don't miss out on my next upload. All right, let's move on to strategy number 2. Strategy 2. Now, this is definitely the more aggressive approach to ranked this season. And just for context, I strongly encourage you not to do this if you are solo queuing. It's just way too risky with randoms. However, if you have a team and you guys are confident in your skill, then this is how I would play it some games. For a drop spot, I would look for a 50-50 at whatever POI we are most familiar with. If you like to 50-50 a place like, say, Stormcatcher, go for it. But you got to be mindful of other teams in the nearby area and let that guide you on how you go about taking that fight. So in other words, if one team went to Command Center, my team and I are trying to wrap up our fight at Stormcatcher as quick as possible so that we can be prepared for if that other team tries to come and third party us. This sounds simple in theory, but it's harder to actually practice game to game because sometimes our minds will drift on what's in front of us and not what we need to be thinking about 60 seconds from now. Now, the other side to this aggressive approach is, let's say you go to Mill and nobody comes with you, but you see 2 or 3 teams go to Downed Beast. Then quickly loot Mill, and well, since Mill is Mill, we know you'll get great loot. Sprint over to Down Beast to see if you can third party that to rack up some easy KP. See, strategy 2 centers around early KP, and once you get that, you go on the hunt one more time. So whether you're rotating to the zone or you happen to already be in it and another potential fight emerges, I suggest taking it. Of course, this is assuming it's a good fight for you and your team to take. But let me pause for a second. Some of you watching may wonder, what does he mean by a good fight for our team to take? Well, that will center around a lot of things, but specifically things like positioning, not only yours, but your enemies. It will also touch on loot. Do you guys have 3 purple armors and you've identified 2 blues and a white on the enemy team? What about abilities? Are you guys running, say, someone like Caustic and his ultimate's ready and you have the enemy team in a neighboring building to you? I mean, you've got to look for advantages if you find some, but you've also got to seize the moment and capitalize on those said advantages. Let's say everything goes according to plan. Your team ends up sitting on 6 KP, but you're in 12th place. Well, now the smart thing to do is chill. You're not looking for any more fights. Placement is your game now. Of course, if you focus on positioning and placement, you will have another opportunity to fight, but hopefully it'll be the last fight in that game. Now, to close on this point, I have to mention strategy 2 is something you should only do if you're on a bull run. Meaning, let's say you've played for 2 hours and your team is up a ton of RP. This strategy is way more risky. So I would avoid this if I have played for an hour, but I've lost 400 RP. Because if that's the case, you're going to want to go back to strategy number 1 or shift things to strategy 3. Strategy 3 is all about late rotations and fighting on the edge of the zone. Now, to be straight up with you guys, I hate this strategy and I rarely ever do it unless it's the hand I'm dealt that match. But I do know that there are other teams out there who see some success when doing this, so I'll give you the lowdown on how it works and why. As far as where you should be dropping, well, it will usually be somewhere on the edge of the map. If you're contested, so be it. If you're not, it really doesn't matter. The edge of the map has a higher chance that your rotation will be much longer than if you land in the center. Simple concept, right? Well, you want to make sure you're near some crafting too. Basically, you want to get as kitted as you can from looting and crafting, and you're going to need to make sure you're carrying extra health meds and that your team has heat shields so that you can weather the storm, so to speak. There's a general theory when it comes to late rotations, and that if you're late for the first zone, you'll probably be late for the following ones as well. But you gotta make sure you're not gonna get caught out in round 3 storm, because that one will kill you, and quickly. Okay, so during your late rotation, if you see another team in zone or on the edge of the circle, you're probably going to want to take that fight. Because the line of thinking here is that it will be less likely to get third-partied because you're not where the rest of the lobby is. Let's say you win that fight. Well, you basically repeat it until the end game. Now, I'm not saying you have to take another fight, but you're going to be playing edge, and here's what will probably happen as a byproduct. You're going to run into the unexpected. See, some teams purposely rotate late, where other teams aren't as mindful of the zone and the timer, so they just wind up rotating late. And this is why strategy 3 can be sketchy. A lot of unexpected things will happen. And if you go this route, you have to make sure you have a Valkyrie on your team, because she will be able to bail you out of some of these super long rotations that you're going to need when you're late for every zone, especially the last few zones. Now, you'll also want a Gibby or a Newcastle, because these legends will help you as you come into those smaller circles with minimal cover and teams are just staring down at you. Now, if you don't have one of these legends, late rotating is even more riskier. So your third legend could be a recon legend or someone like Ashe or Horizon. I think Ashe really helps in this team comp because she'll help you find more fights if you're scouring the edge of zones for potential teams. Horizon's a great option too because she's very aggressive and pairs well with the verticality on Stormpoint. But the bottom line is, when it comes to late rotating, expect a lot of mistakes to occur. You're going to end up making a ton of assumptions as you go about rotating late, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of strategy 3. Now, all of these strategies can be useful as you navigate ranked this season, but by and far, strategy 1 is the safest way to rank up efficiently, at least when I'm speaking to the broader audience. Strategy 1 is also widely applicable for all of you out there who continue to solo queue. And that's mostly because I don't recommend trying to roll the dice any more than I already have to with random teammates by trying to take unnecessary risks. And don't forget, kills are worth less at the beginning because placement is rewarded more at the end. Stay patient this season. I think if you're patient and constantly analyze how your games are going, you should see success. Remember to remain flexible as a team, because one game you might go strategy 1 and then the next game you may switch it up. Find your groove and continue to do what works. Just make sure you don't make any of these 7 mistakes that I covered in this video here. Thanks for watching.